Okay, here we go. Focus. Speed. I am speed.
Hello, friends from the Petersen Automotive Museum. I am Jay Ward of Pixar Animation Studios. I am the creative director for the world of cars, and I've got some answers for you today about cars, questions that you've asked. All right, so the first one is, why did we choose cars as a subject matter for an animated film? Well, up to that point, we had done bugs and toys and fish and monsters. Cars appealed to us for a different reason. I think because a lot of us on the film had grown up being gearheads. We had a love affair with the automobile anyway. And it was really a cool idea to think of this town or this world of living cars where no humans existed. And the cars had personalities sort of that we saw in cars in real life. And we brought those personalities to life in these vehicles. So that was why we chose automobiles as a subject matter. But of course, the biggest thing for us always at Pixar is story. If you don't have a great story, you just don't have a great film, no matter what you're animating. It could be, again, toys, fish, robots. If it's not a good story, it's not a good movie. So luckily, we had a great story idea for Cars, and then Cars as a subject matter, and it all worked out great. The second question is, how do you go about giving human characteristics to inanimate objects? This is a great question, too. One of the things we struggled with really early on in Cars was how to bring the vehicle to life and yet not have it be too rubbery or spindly. So an automobile, a real automobile, is 3,500 pounds, 4,000 pounds. It's a heavy vehicle. And when we animated them, we at first made them too rubbery, too spindly. They were moving around, the mouths were moving a lot, the eyes were moving, and they were alive and expressing themselves, but they were also unbelievable as cars. They just didn't feel like real vehicles. And so we slowly began to tamper back the movement until we just had enough that you believe it's an automobile. It looks like an automobile, but we have mouths moving, we have fenders moving, we have the lids moving up and down on the windshield. And you buy it's a car, and yet you get it that it's a living being, it's a living character. And it was harder for cars. They roll on wheels, they don't have hands and arms to gesture the way I'm gesturing. You have to just do it with just the wheels motioning in and out and the eyes looking around and a little bit of movement from the mouth, but definitely harder than trying to animate a human. The next question is, most animations of cars use the headlights as eyes. What motivated you to shift to the windshield? So a question we used to get a lot was, back when we started on the movie Cars, people were used to seeing cars that were alive with the eyes and the headlights because there was films like, first of all, there were these Chevron gas station commercials that were done by Aardman, stop motion. There was some bad 70s TV shows where the eyes were in the headlights, and it made perfect sense to put the eyes in the headlights. There are these round shapes, the grille looks like a mouth, the bumper looks like a chin, and you're off and you got a face. The problem we had with it was when you put everything down in the front of the car, you suddenly have the head of a snake. Everything's down low and in the front. By moving the eyes back to the windshield and leaving the mouth in the front, you suddenly have the head of a horse or of a dog, where you have a whole snout in front of the eyes and a nose and a mouth in the front, and it really opened it up. Especially as you began to turn the vehicle around, it really started becoming much more of a dimensional whole living being instead of just a face stuck to the front of a car. One of the biggest influences for us was a 1952 Walt Disney short called Susie the Little Blue Coupe. That was animated by or directed by Bill Peet, and it was a car that had the eyes in the windshield, and it worked so well, and it was so charming. In fact, I've got a Susie right back here, and if you look at it, you can see this is 1952. The eyes were in the windshield, the mouth was in the front. Now, this was a lot more animated than we made Cars because it was a 2D, a flat cartoon, so they could really take some liberties with moving the car around. But this was a really good inspiration for us. Susie was a great inspiration for us for a car that moved around, a car that was alive in a fun way that really made you believe the car was its own living thing. So, put Susie there. Some of the car characters are clearly based on existing makes and models, but some others are more ambiguous. Which cars were designed from scratch or just adapting from existing cars? So in the world of cars, it's a little unique. We have a known world of automobiles. And so we wanted to have real cars in the film. Sheriff is a Mercury, and Fillmore is an old Volkswagen bus, and Sarge is a Jeep. But at the same time, we wanted to have our own characters, our own in-house designs. Lightning McQueen, totally designed by Pixar artists, made her a tow truck. Feels like an old American truck, but no particular one. Really tried to keep these primary or lead characters as our own in-house designs. Obviously, Doc Hudson being a Hudson Hornet and Sally being a Porsche, but Mater McQueen, what we call in-house designs. And that balance of those two really helped the world feel believable. If we had all in-house designs where we didn't do any licensed vehicles, I think it would work as well, but it would feel less rooted in authenticity. That's a big word for us at Pixar, is authenticity. And having cars that look and sound like real cars definitely helped keep the level of authenticity high for us. Okay, so that was the next question. Moving down the list. The Cars films feature many well-known individuals who are transformed into characters. How do you stay true to the character? What do the subjects think of their portrayal? Is there anyone in particular that you're excited to work with? On the first Cars particularly, it was really fun because we were able to tap all these people in the automotive world that we looked up to, like Jay Leno was in the film. We had Mario Andretti in the film. We had Richard Petty, obviously, in the film. And then we even had Michael Schumacher appear at the end of the movie. And the first thing we would ask the people before we even put them in the movie was, what car do you feel personifies you the most? If you were to become a car, which one of your race cars, which one of your vehicles personifies you the most? So for Mario Andretti, his car that he actually won at Daytona with was a perfect example of a car that really personified him. For Richard Petty, the King, it was that Petty blue Superbird that just personified Richard Petty. For somebody like Jay Leno, we sort of did more of a wordplay with Jay Lemo, gave him more of the chin and did kind of the black and white top on the convertible. And for somebody like Michael Schumacher, it had to be a Ferrari. And of course, Luigi was a Ferrari fan, so it worked out well. That's definitely a really fun part for us, is finding a way to feature people that we really look up to in the automotive world. I wish we could have gotten more of them in the first film, but it was still really fun working with all these people who loved our movie, so that was cool. There are plenty of automotive specifics in these movies that might go over a young audience heads. Member, is the goal to educate or reward car buffs who might be watching. So when we make any animated film at Pixar, any movie at Pixar, we're never making them for children, and we're not making them just for adults. Our goal is to make a great film, a great story that appeals to everybody of all ages. And for a child, they may laugh at the gags and the jokes and funny moments. For an adult, they're going to see emotional things that connect with them and might even bring a tear to their eye. So in a perfect Pixar film, it works for everybody. The whole family's enjoying it, watching it, but people are getting different things out of it. People often look at animated content and say, oh, you make kids' films. No, animation is a medium. It's a way of storytelling, just like live action, just like stop motion. Animated films are not necessarily children's films. It's a medium, but it's one that we enjoy. It's bringing inanimate objects to life. So our goal is to have both children and adults really love them. We're fortunate with Cars because a lot of little kids love cars going vroom vroom and racing, and so that works out well. But we have a lot of gearhead fans out there that love the movie Cars for all the stuff we put in for them. So we're fortunate that it worked out for both groups. Were there any films that we looked at that were helpful for us for reference or research when we made the Cars movie? We looked at a lot of Cars films that were out there, films that were centered around the automobile, like obviously the chase scene in Bullet, or all the racing in Grand Prix with the cameras on the cars. But that's not what we were trying to do. We weren't making a car movie. We were making a great story with cars. So the stuff that we were more worried about was getting the racing shots accurate for the track moments. And for that, we actually tapped Fox Sports, who was recording NASCAR races, and asked them, where do you guys put the cameras? Show us everywhere on the track we should have a camera, and we'll put it in the same place in our movie. We went one step beyond with them and said, if you could put the camera anywhere you wanted, but you can't right now, where would you put it? And we got a couple of those in too. So when you watch the opening scene to the first Cars, a lot of those shots are almost identical to real NASCAR camera angles and shots, and that was pretty cool to be able to do that. Let's see, beyond the cars themselves, the world of cars has created a whole world for them to live in. What motivated the design of Radiator Springs? Great question. One of the things that appealed to us was Route 66 in doing our research, that there were these little towns that were beginning to dry up on Route 66. People weren't visiting them. They didn't know they were there. The interstate had bypassed them. And that was a story of America that we were excited about telling, especially through the eyes of a hotshot race car who just wanted to get to his next race, who had no interest in nostalgia or small town or people that worked together to keep a town alive. And so Radiator Springs was really influenced by these great towns we saw on Route 66, where everybody owned a business and took pride and needed the travelers to stop in order to keep those towns alive. That's why when McQueen comes to town, they're doing anything they can to keep him there because they need to keep this town alive. The coolest part that I look back on now is with Cars. I've gone back to Route 66 since our movie came out, and it's actually brought new tourists, new fans, new kids, new Cars fans to come to these little towns on Route 66 and try to support them and keep them alive. And that makes me feel so good that a movie we made had an influence and helped maybe some towns that would have been forgotten, maybe some parts of Route 66 that a kid wouldn't have cared about. That was really cool to see that, and that it still goes to this day. I was in a little town kind of near Joplin, Missouri on Route 66, and they were selling Cars toys. And they were literally running up to the local Walmart and buying the Cars toys and then bringing them to their town just so they could sell the stuff, just to have it for all these kids coming through the little towns. And that was really neat. Another thing that is really cool is the fact that Cars lives on. Every day there's a new fan of Cars born and raised up into it that loves it and gets a hold of me somehow and says how much they love the movie Cars all over again. And that's pretty cool. What's another question I could answer for you about Cars? It's been amazing to work on it. I've loved every minute of it. I've loved the people that I've met along the way. I actually came to the Petersen Automotive Museum probably in 2003 or 2004. Richard Petty was being inducted into the Hot Wheels Hall of Fame. And we came because Richard Petty was in our movie and we wanted to support him. And that was the night that I met Bruce Meyer for the first time. I met Wally Parks, Alex Xidius, Chip Foose. They were all there. And it was so special to me as a car guy, as a gearhead, to be in a real car environment and get to know these people, meet these people, and see how many amazing people there are in the car world. It really helped us feel even more motivated to make a great film for people who love cars when we were making the movie. One of the questions that I passed over earlier, I'm going to go back to is, am I a car enthusiast outside of my part in creating the movies? Do I have a favorite car? I am an absolute gearhead. You can probably see by my den that there's a couple toy cars behind me. I love real cars as well. I have 4 old cars, old motorcycles, scooters, a lot of fun vehicles. So yeah, I'm definitely a car guy. And when I started at Pixar, I worked on a film called Monsters, Inc. And as we were finishing on Monsters, Inc., somebody told me about a movie called Cars. And I said, yeah, I'd like to work on that. And I started on the movie. And as I was working on it, I worked in the art department. And then I went on to manage the character team. So I'm managing the people building the characters, and I'm looking at it and going, that's not quite right. Actually, the Hudson would have this little small wheel, bolt pattern. Let's get that right. And actually, this car should have bias ply tires, not radials. And they said, what's bias plies? What's radials? And so I started educating people on the crew about cars. And after a while, our director, John Lasseter, was hearing me speak to people about the differences, real differences in cars. And he realized I was really a car person. And I sort of became the carsultant for the movie, helping them get those details right. So, for instance, the roof of flows where the neon spark plugs are, that's the firing order of a flathead V8. I put that in there just for the geeky thing that real car people look at flows and go, that looks like a flat. Oh my gosh, it's firing in the right order of a flathead. That's the little geeky stuff we like. Doc Hudson has real racing pattern / dirt track tires when he's doing the stuff. When he puts on his red wheels and the old tires, they have the right pattern when he's sliding on the dirt. Every engine sound, we try to record the right car. every detail we try to get right about, where the turn signals are or which side the door handle is located, all those things. We really spent a lot of time making these cars look beautiful in the movie. And it works well because you see it as this beautiful character. And yet, if you stop and look back, you say, oh, I know what that is. That's based on a whatever car it was. So that was really the balance that we all, as gearheads working on the movie, enjoyed getting right. Well, I hope I've answered some fun questions for you today. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about Cars, the movie, and our work on it. And it's been a real pleasure. I want to say how much I love the Petersen Automotive Museum, everybody at it. If you haven't been there lately, definitely go see the Lightning Mcqueen Mechanical Institute. I worked on that, really enjoyed it, enjoyed the experience. And the Petersen is one of the few places you can see a life-size Lightning McQueen and go up and touch it. There's not many places you can do that. So really a big shout out to them for having that exhibit that is so accessible to people at the museum. That makes us so proud at Pixar to get to work with the Petersen on projects like that. So again, hope you enjoyed your time. I'm Jay Ward. I really appreciate you watching and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.